just keep pushing, because I'm really happy that I achieved a goal that I didn't think was possible. I can't drive, but I was able to fly and reach new heights. Of course, there are things we can't do as people with limitations, but those limitations are just the back door to a different future, is what I would say.
Hi everyone, it's Carrie from Live Accessible, and today we have a very special guest, Jarah, otherwise known as Gem, and she is actually my cousin, and she's down in South Carolina right now. She has the same eye condition as me, but she just came back from the exchange program from Japan. So today we're going to talk about Japan and how her experience was both traveling abroad to Japan, being visually impaired, as well as being an exchange student in Japan. So go ahead, Jarah, introduce yourself. And you also have a YouTube channel, so go ahead and introduce that to everyone. And this is your time, so go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jarah, also known as Gem. I have a YouTube account, which is called Gemalem. So I, of course, like my cousin said, have the same eye condition as her. My YouTube channel is basically, comical and inspirational. That's my theme going on. I want to, inspire people to achieve their dreams in life, even though they have something going on in their life, just like maybe how I have my disability, but I don't let that stop me from, of course, doing things like studying abroad or, learning Japanese. So that's what I want to do.
And she's my little cousin, so I can get to make fun of her a little bit here, but she used to be, or no, she still is addicted to anime, and I always joke with her that she learned Japanese just so that she doesn't have to use the subtitles.
I feel like I accomplished the goal.
Go ahead and tell us a little bit about your vision. I know it's a little bit different than mine. Tell them about your vision and just how you feel about your vision and growing up with it.
Well, basically, from what the doctors told me, I have 2400, 2500-ish, around that frame. It usually changes because for me, depending on my eye pressure, my visual acuity kind of changes, flip-flops here and there. I do have peripheral vision, which is kind of saves me in my times of clumsiness a lot. And basically, growing up with this visual impairment of I've spent until 9 years old in the Philippines, and in the Philippines there wasn't really much accessibilities, you would say, or no programs kind of helping visually impaired people, or mainly people with disabilities, with trying to get through their educational goals or their careers in life. My parents had to hire some people to help me with my work or help me achieve whatever goals I have during that time in my academic life. I stayed in the Philippines until I was about 9 years old, and then I moved here to America due to Carrie's dad suggesting one of an aniridia specialists. So we came here to America for one of those reasons. So that's the biggest reason why we came here. And so we visited this doctor, and he just basically told me to stay, or else my eye condition will be aggravated. So my parents decided to stay here in America to keep my eye condition in check. And ever since then, I've been taking different kinds of medication. From 9 years old to I think about 15 years old, I took this pill called Thimox and 3 eye drops that control my glaucoma pressure, since not only, of course, I have aniridia, I also have glaucoma. This maintains the pressure and just keeps my vision in check and makes sure that nothing goes wrong. I also get prescription glasses, but they can only go, I can only see so far with these glasses. So what I usually do in school is I have this little thing, telescope thing. It's about yay big, and it's called a monocular. So I use that to read things. Thank goodness it's the 21st century because we have smart boards nowadays. Sometimes when, the computers are more accessible in the classroom, teachers put me in the computer, which is a lifesaver because I can just look at the computer screen and then copy notes off of that. And that's basically how I moved on from elementary to high school. So basically, high school, I have, more friends. I start to go places. So basically, there are more bigger mobility challenges. And during high school, basically, I've already started taking mobility classes for, the cane and everything. But of course, high school students kind of middle school, high school, that time, you're kind of self-conscious about what you're doing. So
Yeah.
so I try not to use a cane. I'm really crazy, but basically now since I'm in college, it's definitely it's definitely a must when you are in places where you are not familiar. I still have enough vision to see the stoplights, which is a good thing for me. But sometimes when sometimes I can't deny anymore that you do need these visual accommodations for you to be able to live accessible in life and basically need to achieve what you need to do and just move on with life.
So tell us a little bit about your experience being visually impaired, going to Japan, and being a student there.
First of all, before I came to Japan, I already mentioned, I love anime, and I learned the language, and then I got sucked into the culture. And as I was doing research like about the culture during my high school years, I've always gotten this idea that Japan is a really cool country, but at the same time, since I am also, I want to go there. It's a really cool country. So as a visually impaired person, I wonder how is it like for visual impaired people to go to Japan and live there. So I find all of these information about, disabled people in Japan, but there seems to be not enough information for visually impaired people. There was just information about, people who can't really walk or people who can't hear, but nothing for some reason, nothing about people who can't see. The only thing I do my research over and over, and I really get irritated because all I see is the information about this yellow line around the streets, and that's for visually impaired people to stay on the line and make sure that they don't get lost in the streets. I'm going to explain more about that in a bit. So that's all the information I got, and I was so irritated, and so I got nervous. I got so nervous. I'm like, what is it like in Japan? There's this saying called, the nail that sticks out always gets hammered down. So that sounds like something visually impaired person could probably struggle with. And some people say that Japan is still a very, traditional society where, they're still not accepting of some differences. And so I got really scared. It still didn't stop me from going abroad because it was my dream to go there. So
Yeah,
with,
you really want to go.
with lack of information, I already chose this major. I already started learning Japanese. I'm already too far deep into this hole. So I was like, well, it's better to take a challenge than to not do so at all and just regret it for the rest of my life. I just said I'm gonna do it and figure out whatever's gonna happen. During pre-departure of Japan, I have the Commission for the Blind helping me with my college. They've always been assisting me, and I'm so appreciative. And I asked my counselor, "Do you have any information in Japan?" And she's like, "Well, we probably do." And in the end, they were struggling with the same information, lack of information that I was. They're like, "We can't really confirm anything." And I'm like, "Okay, it's fine. It's fine. I can just go in it like surprised." We get to the airport going to Japan, and then I don't know, there's probably a lot of people in the same boat as we are that tried to travel on airplanes with disabilities. I was so scared, so I took the accommodations with the wheelchair accommodation, so I just don't get lost in the airport. Because going into an airport for people who are even sighted, they get lost in JFK. So what does
Yeah,
that make me?
it's huge.
Visually impaired? It's so huge. I'm not doing that. I'm going to get accommodations. So I got a wheelchair service. It was pretty scary because like during the plane ride, I'm like, I was put into the wheelchair as soon as I could buy it to my parents, and ever since then it was just like a cold thing. They just keep on passing the wheelchair from person to person. I'm like,
Oh
what am I
gosh,
doing?
yeah.
What am I doing? Then so I was just in the plane thinking, what am I gonna do? I'm already nervous. And I was thinking, I want to go home. I want to go home already. But fast forward to the story, I reach Japan and I get this complete culture shock because as soon as I land into Japan, they take me out of the plane like via wheelchair. I could have sworn that those people were going through lengths just to get me to have a good experience. One of the cabin attendants, the male Japanese cabin attendants, were like almost about to like carry me, and I'm like, oh no, I can walk, I can walk.
Oh God.
And then I still remember he hands me over to this Japanese lady who is wearing really high heels. She was in like this nice tight skirt, and then she was just like pushing me in this wheelchair with like this big heavy a hand carry case and my laptop bag, which was like 10 pounds, and she was just carrying me out, and I was really scared because this is the first, like, I've always been proud of my Japanese learning, but of course during that time I was actually still somewhat in elementary level Japanese. So usually in airports there's this language, there's this how do I explain this? There's basically a bunch of speech levels in Japanese, and the more formal you go, the more complex the language gets. So I am here with my elementary Japanese trying to tell this lady, yeah, you don't need to struggle that much. And she would try to talk to me, but it's a requirement for customer service in Japan to talk to you in the highest level of Japanese formality, which is called keigo. So I couldn't understand her. I couldn't understand her. I was like, what is this? I learned Japanese enough to survive, they said. And then this lady was like, she's speaking in like some type of poetry language I don't understand. And so I tried to, I just stopped the Japanese. I tried to speak to her in English. I'm like, no, I can walk. She's like, no, we can't. No, we can't. So I just ended up, going through customs and everything until I reached my travel group. All the way, she was just pushing me with her high heels all the way to
Oh my goodness.
to the east exit. It was crazy. So that was my first culture shock in Japan. Mainly, fast forward all the more, and I realized that Japan, for what people, for its lack of information and what people say that Japan isn't really an accepting country when it comes to like people who are not normal. I was very surprised because those yellow lines I was talking about, they were actually really helpful. Not just for visually impaired people, but also kids, because those yellow lines have bumpy dots on them. And so people that have canes can tell like where they're going, where they should stop before there's like a staircase coming, or like the platform for the train, so you don't fall.
Yeah.
And they also have things such as whistling traffic lights. So for people that can't see very well, you would hear the traffic lights have like this bird sound. It's like cuckoo cuckoo when it turns green, and then a different sound for like the other traffic lights, so that you can distinguish which one's green, which one's red.
So you don't even have to press a button. It just does that all day, or?
For most traffic lights, at least in the urban area, you just don't have to press the button. But there are a lot of cases where you do press the button, but that button is like big and red and lit at night,
Oh, wow.
and in a yellow case, and it's very accessible. It really is very accessible, and their lights are humongous.
Unlike here, where it's like the button. It's like, where the heck is the button on this thing?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's so irritating, isn't it? Those yellow lines are also actually like in each stair step.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, yeah, yeah.
Where are those? Is that just in the city?
Well, I lived in the suburbs, so basically, it wasn't exactly the city, but it was in a place where it was quiet. It was close to kind of like this countryish place, but also close to like Osaka City. I'm like in the center, so I can basically go to the countryside a couple stops from a couple train stops away, and I can go to the
Mhm.
city a couple train stops away. It doesn't take that long. I'm in the smack dab center, so basically literally like the suburbs.
Gotcha. But like, what about like the attitude of the people, like the perception that they have about you?
I mean, Japan's culture, they're not really the type of people who would pry into like whatever is wrong with you or whatever is what your problems are. I'm pretty sure, based on, my actions sometimes and how I look at things really closely, and um the way I read things, I think it's obvious that people can tell that there's something wrong with my vision. But sometimes even the oldest ladies would just be like, "Oh, daijoubu desu ka? Like, are you okay?" And then like just try to help you. Some people say that that's just because you're a foreigner, but I saw some cases wherein there was actually sometimes old people, like the elderly, and sometimes people that are just not able to walk properly. You get help sometimes. It's a very accommodating culture, but at the same time you can't deny that a lot of people are still new to this kind of thing, because for many Japanese people, seeing foreigners or people like that are just not normal sometimes can be jarring. But at the same time, there are a lot of disabled people walking around themselves. Like you could see like a blind lady just like chilling beside the yellow line and the 7-Eleven stop, just like doing her own thing. It's a pretty nice and accessible country. I also studying in Japanese college, and I actually did a Japanese internship where I worked in specifically a school, but it was in a Japanese preschool, and I have to basically go in the typical Japanese work environment. And for me, of course, they expect students that go into these internships to know a good bit of Japanese culture, know enough Japanese to basically hold their own in these type of internships. I went into it. They know my disability. And they were still pretty accepting and accommodating. It was whatever I needed. They tried, at least they tried their best to provide it, and they were just helpful. I think Japan is a country that is willing to open up, especially nowadays, since they're more interested all that jazz. What I do realize is that in Japanese colleges, they're still not acceptable of kind of people using computers in colleges. Like during class time, you can't really take notes with your computer. Or just like in Japanese, I mean, just like in American colleges, we can just easily like take our notebooks or our MacBooks or whatever Chromebooks into the classroom, and the teachers would mostly be fine with it because a lot of people do their work in computers. In a Japanese college, you are required to use pencil or pen and paper, and a lot of the college textbooks there are still in print, which is very irritating. But what I was able to use, since I really, at this point, I'm used to having ebooks or scanned books at the same time. They were able to be accepting of me using an iPad so that I can blow up the PDF PDF of my book. And there was actually one time where I couldn't get a PDF copy of my Japanese textbook. And the worst part is Japanese. One of the Japanese writing system came from the Chinese, and for people who've seen Chinese characters, they're like blocks with plenty of strokes. So I'm here. I'm like, I see blocks, nothing else. So I have to ask Sensei. I'm like, I need to use something to read this textbook, or else I'm not going to be able to be functional in this classroom. And he's like, oh, yeah. You can definitely use your phone. And then he was just like, all right, class. In Japan, I'm usually like called like Jemu-san, Mabaroto-san, Mabalot, on your last name, and san is just an honorific. So he goes up to the class and he's like, all right, guys, Mabarot-san is going to use her phone for her textbook, but nobody else is allowed to use her phone. So when you see her use her phone, just don't mind her. And I'm like, oh my God, she just had to point it out. Okay, but it's fine. Nowadays, Japanese culture is getting more accommodating with people, especially since I don't know if the audience knows, but the 2020 Olympics is going to be held in Tokyo. So Japan is having this new reconstruction where they're like, we will accept more foreigners, we will accept more differences. So they are doing their best to make sure that every single type of person is accepted in Japan. There's like a bunch of new systems being introduced into the school system, and man, they're going hard on the English too.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there's also it started in May 1st, but Japan had a new era. There's a new emperor in the line of succession in the chrysanthemum throne. So a lot of things are definitely changing and like globalizing in Japan. And though people still used to the traditional ways, they're getting to be exposed to all these different types of things, which kind of makes them a little bit more open to new things.
Well, as the next generation also, grows up, it's probably going to change the culture a lot.
Yeah.
So what's like one piece of encouragement that you can give to people who are blind and visually impaired?
Don't worry about your visual impairment, because as long as you try new things, like there's always a backdoor to your future. If you think you have you can't do this because you're blind, like there's another way. If you think there's no way that you could do this because of your visual impairment, there's usually something that's open for you. You just have to take the risk and wait for the opportunity, because that's what happened to me. When I started learning Japanese, because Japan is still on this paper textbook thing, the kanji, the reading and writing was very hard. But then I was just determined to do it because I didn't want to write subtitles. No, I'm just joking. I wanted to learn the language. I wanted to learn the language, and me learning the language led to me wanting to go to the country, even though I didn't know how they were going to treat me, and that led to me having a really successful abroad experience. It improved my Japanese. I could say I can talk normally to Japanese people, daily conversations. Just keep pushing, because I'm really happy that I achieved a goal that I didn't think was possible. I can't drive, but I was able to fly and reach new heights. Of course, there are things we can't do as people with limitations, but those limitations are just the back door to a different future, is what I would say.
That's awesome, Jarah. I'm so proud of you. We're all very proud of you.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming on. Thank you to everybody for watching. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this experience. And you can watch the rest of the interview series. I will link it down below and in the YouTube card. And if you want to be part of this, drop a comment or send me a message and we can see how we can work that out. That would be awesome. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more videos on how you can live accessible. Bye!